It's interesting to observe one thematic overlap between the concept of Dr. Denner here and the concept of Counselor Troy in The Next Generation. We find out that Dr. Denner became a psychiatrist partly because her high Esper abilities made that field appealing to her and made it more of a natural fit. And similarly, Deanna Troi is a character built on the idea that ESP, in her case, her supernatural betazoid empathy, is a natural fit for a counselor. Now, I've already mentioned how Dr. Denner isn't your standard empathic counselor type, but more of a researcher. But still, I still think it's interesting to note that in both cases, the Star Trek writers are kind of drawing a link between natural empathy or interpersonal skills or clinical intuition and supernatural ESP type abilities. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, whether the creative team on Star Trek was making that connection on purpose or whether it's just a natural thing that emerged as the story came together. I think in an expressive or a metaphorical way, there's something really artistic about the idea of doing this fantasy reframe of these intangible senses in real life of empathy and intuition and things like that, and making a fantasy reframe by switching these out for supernatural powers like ESP or telepathy. Deanna Troi is sort of like a fanciful, artistic recasting of the Rogerian ideal of the empathetic counselor. Somebody who knows what you're feeling because she can feel it too. Someone who has a pretty good idea of whether you're telling the truth or not and whether there might be more information you haven't yet begun to share. Now, unfortunately, I don't think the portrayal of Troi, especially in the early seasons of TNG, I don't think necessarily did a good job of approximating what actual empathy looks like in practice, though it definitely got better later on. But I think the concept of Troi and the concept of supernatural empathy as a fantasy expansion of the themes of real-life empathy and related concepts, I think that's a really poetic and a really fun concept. And I think it was, probably without anybody realizing it, it was kind of foreshadowed a little bit in this alt pilot episode here by this background element that Denner was attracted to the field of people studies because she had higher extrasensory awareness than most people.